Hey everyone, welcome to our small footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. Coming back to try and get on track with the food prep, planning, preserving videos that I do every month. I have been a little absent. It's been just really busy. Just really busy getting stuff sorted because we're in the last we're right in the middle of winter, and there's a lot of tasks that we need to get done during winter that we can't do once it heats up. So we've been really focused on trying to decide which tasks need doing first, getting the supplies to do them and all that sort of thing, but also getting food sorted from the last grocery trip. So things will slow down now and I'll catch up on all these videos because I think this is only like part 3 of July's food prep and planning. I've got a lot of content filmed and just haven't had the time to do the voiceover. So as per usual, it's late. It's like, what time are we at? We're at 4:30 in the afternoon, and I've managed to come out and do this because I've got pork roast in the oven. I've got jars on the counter, which I can hear from here, and I've got the timer running. And so the kids are out feeding the chooks and stuff, and then I think the bigger kids have taken the dogs for a wander while that's happening and getting the pigs fed and stuff like that. So I've come out here to do this now, which is probably the best time to do it, but depending on what I'm cooking for dinner, depends on whether I need to be in the kitchen or not. So anyway, we're sorting it out. One of the things on the list is to get the little patio built out the back of the new extension, and I should be able to sit out there and do things like this, which means not having to come all the way out to the garden to do it. So that might help, might not, we'll see. So what else? Thank you everyone who turned up for the live on Sunday. I didn't advertise that in much of an advance because I wasn't sure if I was going to get to work, and it didn't end up working the way I wanted it to. I wanted to do it horizontal like this, using my computer as a control for my phone, filming it, and then using the computer to be able to see the comments and stuff more easily, because I didn't assign a moderator or anything else because I intended to do it while in the video, but then when I was doing it only on my phone I couldn't do it. So yeah, anyway, thank you for coming, thank you for watching it afterwards. We will try and do this, try and do it more as a regular thing because I know everyone loves them. So I have been saying all along that I need to do them for the Patreon as well. So maybe I need to do them, you know, once a month for Patreon viewers and once a month for the YouTube channel or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. So and the kids left me alone mostly, so you know, that was good. Anyway, what else? I did a short up the other day, if you haven't seen it yet, showing we got new hay for the chicken pen. So I did a short up showing all the chickens and their new hay. But I will try and do the chat with me and update videos each week like I used to do. I used to do a chat vlog update video on Sundays, and I stopped doing them because I just didn't feel like I had things to update as such. Like, there just wasn't enough to make a video worth. But as we're getting back into our project work and as we're getting back into the warm weather, and I'm going to start on my seedlings and stuff soon, then I'll have more to chat about too, but we'll see how we go. Anyway, rambling. This video, as I said, I think it's part 3 of the food prep, planning and preserving for the July-August grocery trip. So we'll get into it, and I'll see you guys again at the end. So this was the day after we did the buttermilk chicken in the frying, so I needed to strain my oil out so I could reuse that. Now, I'm pretty sure Susan sent me this, but please let me know if I'm wrong on that. But it's a strainer, an oil strainer, and it's cool. I've looked at a whole bunch of different ones of these on Amazon and just hadn't really made a decision and bought one. And this one's really good because it's so large. It's got such a good capacity underneath it, and the strainer just slots in the top, because a lot of the problems with strainers I find is that they go missing because the kids use them for various things, and ones that have been used for oil aren't necessarily great for using for other things either. So very nice strainer, this one, that came, I'm pretty sure it was from Susan, so thank you, Susan. So I strained out the oil. Now there's a lot of sludge in the bottom of the pan, and that's because the buttermilk chicken, the coating's flour based, it's just dry flour. So that flour burns and ends up in a sludge in the bottom. So I don't pour that out, I just pour it off, which is why I let it settle too till it's cool. That sludge settles at the bottom and I just pour the top of it off, and then we just go and bury the sludge out in the compost pile or somewhere like that. I don't think I did much in the way of cooking during this day. I strained that oil and then sort of sorted dinner, maybe. I don't really know, because there's not a whole lot of footage between straining the oil and cooking dinner, but Who knows? So for dinner we were having steak, so I wanted some nice veggie sides to go with it, and it was cold, so you know, bakes are really nice. So I made 2 big pans of cheesy vegetable bake. One was all just potato, and one was a mix of cauliflower and broccoli. Now I diced up the potato really small cubes because I wanted it to cook at the same sort of rate as the cauliflower and broccoli mix. I do have their Thermomix cutter which can cut slices, but I didn't have a clean bowl, I think, at the time, or I'm not sure why I didn't do it. I think perhaps just the layering of it was something I couldn't be bothered doing, so I just diced them up really nice and small. Filled the other pan with the cauliflower, beans and broccoli in sort of largest chunks so that they both would cook at the same sort of time. I drizzled both pans with a little oil, salt and pepper, stuck them in the oven to start cooking while I got the cheese sauce going. That might have been why I didn't want to slice the potatoes up, because I was making a cheese sauce. I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, I had part of our French breadstick left from the previous bake of bread, so I put that in the Thermomix and turned it into breadcrumbs for on top of the bakes, and then I got into making the cheese sauce. Now, homemade bread always makes the best breadcrumbs. They're lighter and more flaky, a bit like sort of panko crumbs rather than store-bought breadcrumbs. So I always try, and if there's any bread that looks like it's going stale, I will grind it up and stick it in the freezer to use, because I really enjoy using that as the breadcrumbs. I made a cheese sauce up in the Thermomix using coconut cream, Nuttelex, flour, nutritional yeast, a bit of Vegeta and some Dijon, and cooked it for 10 minutes. Now, most of my cheese sauces are still a little bit throw together. It depends on which coconut cream I'm using, like if I'm using some of the decanted goon bag stuff, or whether I just want to use a whole tin, because I don't like using partial tins of coconut cream. I very much prefer to use a whole tin of coconut cream if I'm going to. But I just mixed it all up and cooked it for the 10 minutes so that it would thicken up. After that, I pulled the dishes out of the oven, topped them with the sauce and then with the breadcrumbs. Now, I had drizzled a little bit of olive oil into the crumbs and mixed them up. This will help them to toast up and brown when they're baking. While that was cooking, I decided to put the chicken breasts away. I should have done these yesterday when I was doing all the rest of the chicken, but I think I was going to have some for dinner and then change my mind, and we had steak instead. So because we're having steak, I still need something to happen with these because of their best before dates. I decided to just fillet them so that they defrost quickly and are suitable for me to use in a myriad of ways, and vacuum seal them up for the freezer. I just bagged them up into a couple of bags, about 1 kilo each, as these containers are just over 2 kilos per container, and then got them in the freezer for later on in the month. I don't know what I'll do with these. I tend to make my green chicken or red chicken curry with breast fillets. Sometimes I make a faux KFC using breast fillets. There's a few things that I like. Some of my chicken soups I prefer breast to thighs with, depending on whether it's a quick soup or not and things like that. So I do like to have just a couple of bags of breasts in the freezer for those purposes. I sliced the steak up. This was the on sale rib fillet that I bought whole. We've already had 1 serve of this, and this is our second, so we've had 2 full meals out of the steak. We probably could have stretched it to 3 if we were being a little bit more stingy, but we have steak so rarely that we like to, make the most of it when we do. I let it come up to room temp, sprinkled it with salt before cooking. The kids I didn't do too thick, and I did it about a medium well, just to their tastes. They all really like steak, and they would probably eat it thicker and slightly rarer, but it's easier just to cook it all at the same pace for them. Darryl and I like our steak rare, so I cut it a little thicker, got a really nice searing colour on the outside and rare in the middle. The pan probably wasn't quite hot enough for the kids, and they're not as nicely coloured as I would have liked, but the kids enjoyed it anyway, and are lucky to get steak of this quality, I suppose. We served up a bit of potato bake and the veggie bake and had it with the steak. Super simple but super filling and tasty. I am having a little bit of trouble with the new oven with stovetop temperatures and searing and things like that. It just doesn't seem to get as hot as the Camp Chef did, and then that's sort of throwing me. I think I just need to let it heat up for longer. I think I'm just being a bit impatient, so I'm still working on that, because yeah, the steak was a little blonde for me. I definitely like it to be a little bit more coloured on the crust of the steak. The next day I needed to work on the zucchini, so I started off the day with zucchini fritters. One of those things that whenever I'm working on that day is the thing I try and use in a meal as well, 2 birds and all that. So if I'm prepping something to go to the freezer, then I also want to use part of it to make a meal or two for that day, so that I'm not having to double handle stuff, but I'm not having to like prep a meal that's completely different whilst also prepping something that's going into the freezer. I like to make it work for me in that day as well. So the first lot I graded up with the Thermomix cutter. I have the cutter attachment for my Thermomix, and it's basically just a food processor blade that goes inside the Thermomix, and it is amazing because it cuts it inside a separate bowl inside the Thermomix. I don't have to grab any other appliances out. It's just a grey bowl and a stick that goes into the Thermomix, and I use it. I really enjoy it. I enjoy the different grading and slicing thicknesses that it does, and I used to use the drum grater on my KitchenAid, which is fantastic. I love the drum grater for the KitchenAid, but it just created more mess and more space required on the bench and things like that, so I do really like the Thermomix cutter. I am going to put a quick little spiel in here about the fact that the Thermomix is having a trade-up offer on their TM31s. If you have a TM31 and you are thinking about upgrading to a TM6, they are offering a upgrade where you can keep your TM31 or you can send it back, and you also get a discount on the purchase of your Thermomix, your TM6. And if you're just looking to buy a TM6, they actually have the cutter as the bonus for purchasing your TM6 these days at the moment until I think it's August, 10th of August or 12th of August or something. So if you are in the looking for that, they do also appear to have some stock of the cutter. So the cutter came out and it was really hard to get, and they do appear to have some stock of the cutter in as well if you're just looking for that too. So just as a side note there, we could label that an ad, except it's not really an ad because Thermomix isn't paying me to do that, but I do earn commissions off purchases made through the Thermomix website, like the cutter and that. If you put my name in when you purchase it, I do make a commission off it. And if you purchase a Thermomix via me as your consultant, I also make a commission. So just worth mentioning. Anyway, back to the regular stuff. What did I do? I salted and squeezed the zucchini that I was using for the fritters. I got the majority of the excess liquid out so my fritters wouldn't be soggy. I've mentioned it before when I'm squeezing stuff, but these flour sack tea towels are amazing for this. I've used different varieties of cheesecloth before, and some of the ones you use, the weave is just too flexible, so when you squeeze things you can actually almost tear holes in the weave of the cloth. These flour sack tea towels are amazingly sturdy, but they are thin enough to let all that juice through. I really, really like them. They're a really big, really good size too. I'll try and remember to put a link to them in the description, because I buy these off Amazon because they seem to be an American thing, not an Australian thing. I used a cup to sort of guesstimate how much zucchini I ended up with for flour ratios and that sort of thing. Then added some egg, flour, salt and baking powder. Mixed it up and checked the texture. Similar to the okonomiyaki, the texture is a little bit up to you regarding the batter and zucchini ratio. I prefer the vegetables to be the bulk and the batter just to be holding the vegetables together. Some people like their fritters more like a pancake with a few veggies in them, and that's not how I like it. That's how I remember fritters when I was a kid, when my grandmother made them for me, like meat fritters. They were sort of a pancake with little dots of meat and stuff through them. I want my okonomiyaki and my zucchini fritters and that sort of thing, I want them to be solid vegetable with just the batter holding them together, but it's up to you how you want to make them. I got all 3 pans going again, which is just amazing to have 3 pans going, and started frying them off with Darryl's help. I used an ice cream scoop to spoon even amounts into the pans. Sometimes I just use a measuring cup, like a quarter cup or whatever, but this was at hand, so I used it. And it actually was quite neat to be able to use the squeeze trigger to plop it into the pan. I like to keep them fairly small because I like them to get crispy on the outside and cook all the way through. I also use a bit of oil in the pan to help with that crispy factor, but you don't have to. You can just put them on a dry pan. They do have enough egg and fat in the batter that they will cook off, but I like them to be crispy, so I like to put that little bit of oil in there. We served them with some salsa off the shelf, and I had some sour cream, and every time I eat them I remember how much I like them and wonder why I don't make them more often. They are definitely a underrated thing, zucchini fritters, I think, or any sort of vegetable fritters for that matter. They definitely are a tasty thing, and the kids really like them as well. I tend to not make them. You do have to use a fair few zucchinis to make a batch of them, and maybe that's sort of why I don't always do it, because I don't always buy zucchini in bulk, but I really need to remember to do it more often when I do have zucchini on hand. And if I have a good garden season this year, that's a good use for them too. I then grated some more zucchini to make some Choc Zucchini Bread. I was going to turn these into muffins, but I couldn't find the muffin liners anywhere, so it ended up being breads, and that's fine. Very similar to banana bread, super simple: flour, eggs, salt, oil, sugar, baking powder, cacao, a bit of coconut cream, and the zucchini all mixed up into a thick batter and put into the pans. I used my cast iron loaf pans for these because they're nice and small, and zucchini bread is quite a long bake because it's so dense. So keeping them on the smaller size allows them to cook through better than my large jumbo loaf pans that I've got. The jumbo loaf pans are really nice and non-stick and rolled steel and everything, but they are large. They're made for a 900 gram bread loaf, and I do sometimes do my banana breads and stuff in them, but you have to be careful that you don't burn all the outside edges without cooking the middle, so the small loaf pans are good. I got them evenly filled. Using an ice cream scoop is a great way to fill them evenly if you don't know the weight of the batter, which I didn't. Sometimes I do, and I can just pour half into each tin by weight, but because I had intended these to be muffins, I didn't work out the weight of the batter as I was doing it, and it's not something I make often enough to have the ratios written down of the weights to be able to know how much to go into each muffin pan or into each loaf tin and that sort of thing. So I just sort of used the ice cream scoop to put plops in each one till it was right. The rest of the zucchini, other than some that I put in veggie containers for fresh eating in the fridge, I grated up. I didn't salt and strain this lot though, I just put it all into vacuum seal bags. About 750 grams seem to fit in these bags well. These are the smooth sided bags that I bought specifically for the chamber vacuum sealer. I bought them pre-sized, pre-sealed to make my life easier, and because they were fairly cheap to do that. But I may want to get some larger sizes as well. This was sort of a test run. I bought 3 different sizes they come in 100 packs. Bought 3 different sizes, but I might size up again just for some things because I probably would have packed a little bit more into these zucchini bags if I had the option to. Then I put it into the freezer to use later on in the month. So I use this in a lot of things. I'll use this in soups that I don't care if they're cloudy. I use it when I'm making like bolognese or lasagnas or any sort of a mince dish. I just mix the zucchini through. It gives some liquid in the bottom, but it just adds nutrient. It doesn't taste like much of anything, but it's a filler in there and it's good for you. So I like to have them in the freezer to use for those sort of things. I have used these for making zucchini bread and things like that straight out of the freezer before, and I probably will try one of these bags for the chocolate zucchini bread again because everyone really liked that, and I've got a few bags sitting in the freezer now, so we will see how we go. This is what the breads look like out of the oven. I tested them with a toothpick. I do have a cake skewer somewhere, but you know, I don't know where. I don't know if I show slicing them later. I might have a photo. If I do, I'll put it in. But they were lovely and dense. Everyone enjoyed them and ate them over the next couple of days. I just put them in containers, sliced it, put it in a container on the shelf, and let them add it as they went over the next couple of days. For dinner that night, again, using up some more of the zucchini and any other veg that we had that was in the fridge to be used, I did an udon noodle stir fry. I make this quite regularly. You'll have seen it before. It works with frozen vegetables and with fresh, but it's always so much nicer with fresh sliced veggies. On the Camp Chef, I could always only cook 2 pans. It was lovely to be able to cook 3 pans worth this night. It meant I could bump up the quantity of the vegetables, and we had a little left over for whoever wanted it the next day, rather than scraping 2 pans completely clean. And some people sort of would have gone back for more if there had been more to go back for. I did my normal, cooked off the veggies in the pan. I used lids to steam it slightly while cooking, just to speed up that process. And then while that's happening, I put a big pot of water up to the boil to heat the udon noodles. They're shelf-stable noodles, and they don't need cooking as such, but we bring them up to boiling to separate them and then rinse them in cold water to use. These are the Coles brand ones that I use, and they are generally like 2 for $4, the packs, and we use 4 double packs for us, so there's 200 grams, there's 2 servings per pack, so we use 4 packs for the 8 of us. We probably could bump that up by another pack as well, especially if I'm doing 3 pans with veggies and that. But this was enough with all the added veggies to it that didn't need to bump the noodles up because there was all the added veggies. Once the vegetables were where I wanted, I added some of the pre-cooked and marinated chicken thighs again, using what I have in the fridge before moving it to the freezer. So I used that, I'd already used that over a couple of days, so it was a couple of days ago or the day before yesterday, whenever it was, that I had cooked all those thighs up. We've been using them since then, and now this is the last meal I used, and the rest of what was left got vacuum sealed up to go in the freezer for later on in the month, which is how I like to do these sorts of things. Use them, cook them, use them for a couple of days, and then freeze them for later. After I mixed the chicken through, I added in the rinsed noodles, tossing it and adding the Chinese stir-fry sauce. I have always used the Recipe 10 Eats Charlie sauce as inspiration for my sauce, but I don't tend to look it up when I make it anymore. I just sort of throw it all together with whatever I have on hand. Some soy sauce, some sesame oil, a bit of cornstarch, some oyster sauce, some Shaoxing wine, a pinch of sugar and some pepper, and you know, just that kind of a flavor. Sometimes I add a bit of mirin or hoisin. It depends on what flavor profile I'm going for with the stir fry, but it's really very forgiving, and you can taste it as you're making it and then make a call as to whether it needs a little bit more sweetener or a little bit more salt or things like that. I just pour it over and toss till everything is all shiny and coated, and then serve. So that corn flour allows the sauce to thicken up in the pan, and it coats the noodles and makes them all sort of sticky and shiny, which is always lovely. And then we serve it up. The kids like this cold the next day as well, weirdos that they are. I suppose it's fine. I'm not a huge fan of cold noodles myself, but whatever, each to their own. And so if there's extras, they'll eat it cold for breakfast, lunch the next day. But generally speaking, prior to this meal, because we've only had the 2 pans, we haven't had any extras. It's always been just one full meal. Had to move out of the sun. Oh, we've got guinea fowl doing their trek over to get food. So that was another couple of days of food prep, planning and preservation for the July-August month span. And they're walking back this way. That's Penguin, is our grey one, our lavender one. Anyway, yes, that was another couple of days of our food prep. Oh, I'm doing really well with camera work here. Food prep, planning and preservation for July and August, and I will hopefully get another one to you tomorrow. I'm going to try and get a few in a row going over the weekend to get caught up a little bit, but it's the voiceovers that kill me, so we'll see how we go. So thank you for watching again, guys, and I will talk to you next time.